I'm curious, like, what brought you to Detroit?
It was in the air at the time, definitely around 2011, mid 2010s, that Detroit was like a city for do-it-yourselfers or people who were like very scrappy for like startups, artists and creatives, like basically like being able to buy a home for inexpensively and then living together. And so in the back of my mind, I knew it was true. I had a few friends actually who moved here and are still here doing that, including our mutual friend Adrian, who introduced us. So around pandemic time, I felt many people felt this, that they had to get out of New York City. And I was thinking about these ideas for a while about how to design a home with like solar power and all these like sustainable features. And so I knew Adrian had that interest, and I'd been visiting him for several years, since 2018, visiting his home with Diana. The one summer I came was like, magical. Like we went to like this show where an artist was like, he created these like 3D printed controls and was making like noise music. And we just sat in the park and got fireflies were like passing us by, and like random people would like offer us joints. And it was, and this guy would just like pull out of his pocket like a projector that he's working on, like some kind of technology startup. So that was my impression. I was like, okay, well, like I have to find out more about the city. So when the opportunity arose in around October 2020, I moved up. I just like packed, back then everything fit in the car. So I just packed up in New York City, and I drove in 2 days to get here. And then I lived with Adrian and Diana for probably like 5 months for the beginning part. And then we found a house, which I'm renovating right now. And then you had mentioned something about design work or something. So I intuited or thought that you were a designer. Probably I noticed that you were Asian.
Yeah.
Who can say? So then in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, well, Adrian has a friend nearby who also like is interested in houses and was renovating a house. And so when I got like really stuck in my own process, that's when I reached out again. And then we started talking like more in depth. I guess we did talk about a lot of issues about, I guess I would describe it as like being, growing up an Asian young man in America. And I guess I did feel a sense of familiarity and not having many other people to talk to about it. Yeah, so I really appreciated that part of it. And then since then, I've gotten to see your own home and been inspired by it. And then we've been talking about other, technologies, geothermal, solar, that we think are cool and that can, people in Detroit would be open to, we could try those things in Detroit for the future. So I guess it's interlinking factors came into play. I think if I hadn't met you, my impression of Detroit would also be very different.
Before I bought this house, and one of the things that spurred me to actually buy the house was I'd been in Detroit for a couple of years at that time, and I wasn't sure that it was home. And there was this question, this hovering question of like, where is home? What is home? And I ended up deciding to travel to Asia to go trekking in Nepal. And I spent a couple weeks trekking in the Himalayas with this question in the back of my head, where is home? Yeah. We got to this one valley, and as we were at the top, one side of the valley where there was a monastery at the very, very top above the town there. The sky started clearing, and the next morning I went up there and I saw unobstructed view of Annapurna 2, which is one of the tallest peaks there. There's this sense of a longing washed over me. It was I can make my home anywhere, and then also that home is a place that misses you when you're gone. I do think that a lot of folks who come to Detroit and even myself reading those headlines about how it's the Wild West, or how you can do anything there, that I think those are concepts that you come to a place with, but then like the process of like making it a home is maybe about like actually like reconciling like your ideas for like what home means to you with what home is for people that are already living there. It's like, I'm here because there are aspects of Detroit that already feel like home to me. And then there are other aspects that don't necessarily feel like home, but that like I am committed to putting in the work in to make feel like home. And hopefully through that process, you know, I'm deepening that sense of belonging for like all the like my neighbors and, you know, everyone else living in the city as well.
And I have a complementary view, which is that you've mentioned the sense of like the place will miss you when you're gone, mm-hmm. like you being necessary. And I guess I've been kind of working in a dual or complementary way where I'm interested in being part of a community that will keep on going like without me. And it's great for me to be part of it whenever I can or whenever I'm there. But I hear what you're saying. You have preconceived ideas and then you want to adapt them to the place, and then also the people who are there have already adapted and they're unique and they have their own perspectives. And you know, I know that there's other voices other perspectives that other people are bringing forward that is not dependent on me. And if I had to make a podcast, it would be, you know, called like Home, and it would be like interviewing people who had renovated homes and how they think about it, like how they think of belonging, how it relates to their family. I know when I first started here, I would interview people and they would tell me like, oh, like home was my grandmother, and my grandmother was very strict, but she was very loving. And if you didn't come at her correct, she would like, you know, hit your knuckles with a wooden spoon, but she'd still like cook for you. And that made sense to me. It's sort of like, well, can you have home without a grandmother? And you know, our grandmothers, I don't think your grandmother doesn't live here, right? But yeah, I guess, is that something? Can we create our own grandmothers? Can we be our own grandmothers, our own grandfathers? If you ever want to interview Guinea Pig for your podcast, I'm totally down. Yeah, likewise.
Watch One Detroit, Thursday at 7:30 p.m.